Yeah, you can start.
But what happens with Christianity in Kerala, which is a theme that most of us, read and discuss, is that it has been there for such a long time, and it's much older than the European Christianity in that sense, because much before Christianity reached Europe through this politics, the Roman Empire and all that. We have had Christianity in Kerala. That's one thing. And the same applies to Islam, for instance. The early years of Islam, you have it in a place like Kerala. So largely due to this long coastline and the trade connections with West Asia, which dates back to millennia. So people have been coming, and through them, the belief systems like the Jews, the Parsis, the western coast of India and especially Kerala, was open to this sort of influences. So we have Christianity here for a very long time. But my feeling is that, this is what all historians who have studied Christianity tell us. You don't have, say, people from the low caste background or the untouchable background or the background, as we call it, as we refer to them today, becoming part of Christianity. So one of the reasons is that the Christians who were here, through the this maritime trade relations, the community that was formed through that. So they had received a certain kind of social status which was equivalent to the quote unquote clean caste, right? So because of that, it remained as another caste, not as in a way another religion, even as it had a religious practice. So I wish to say that Christianity historically remained as another caste, and they had the sort of relationship with the upper caste, the clean caste. So because of that, we don't find them taking any interest in the sort of the conditions of the lower caste in Kerala. And now perhaps that question itself could be termed as anachronistic, because nobody used to take that much interest in the case of the lower caste, because you have had this situation of agrestic slavery and so on. So if you look at the discourses indigenous to Kerala, we hardly come across any writing. I haven't, as a student of history, I haven't come across anybody writing from Kerala, whether in the 16th century or in the 7th century or any historical period, saying that this sort of caste slavery is bad, we need to abolish it, we need to have another way of appropriating labor and so on. So we don't come across any of that. So because of that, my feeling is that Christianity remained as another caste which was quite exclusive, even as they had their own religious practices. They have had their churches, the sacraments, or other kinds of religious practice. And then there is another huge difficulty. This is in relation to the translation of Bible. See, I haven't come across any reference to Bible being translated in any substantial manner until the coming of the Western Missionaries. Even as we had Christianity here for such a long time. So the ritual language of Christians used to be Syriac, because they followed the Eastern liturgical tradition. So that's why the traditional Christians are referred to as Syrian Christians, because they use Syriac language for this liturgical purposes. And we don't come across examples of any of these people, even those who were Malayalam speaking people, trying to translate Bible into Malayalam. That was not happening. So all historians who have studied the history of Christianity in Kerala refers to the fact that it remained as another caste, an exclusive caste. And they were a sort of a buffer caste, which could neutralize this pollution and things of that kind. So that's one. So it becomes completely a different enterprise altogether. Now this next aspect of your question relates to substantial numbers of the people from the Dalit communities, or those at those days slave caste communities becoming Christians. That happens, to my mind, from the middle of the 19th century onwards, movement, there was a very substantial effort by the Church Missionary Society in Travancore, at the north of Travancore. In fact, they were not just confined to the north of Travancore. So when they started their work from 1815 onwards, and subsequently you find them even going as far north as Talsheri. Talsheri they had their outpost subsequently, not exactly in the early, the second decade of the 19th century, but later. But when Basel Mission came, they gave all those northern regions to Basel Mission subsequently. And then they were confined to the Church Mission Society, which is known as CMS, was confined to northern Travancore up to Trishur. And then you have those places like Kundankulam where they're part of their missionary operation. And then you have London Missionary Society, LMS, which worked from Koilon towards south, which included South Travancore and so on. So these were the two very, very powerful global missionary organizations who worked here, and it was during their work that large numbers of Dalits joined Christianity. There are a couple of occasions when Dalits joined Christianity before these larger movements began. So one is this little earlier to this so-called Mallapalli movement of early 1850s. You have one untouchable lady, her name was Kali, and who was christened as Lucy, and she was in fact a slave sold to a European seaman. I think he was a captain of a ship, and who was supposed to take her to Java, and she ran away from. In fact, one of these missionaries who wrote the history of missionaries, CMS Society, he refers to that. And she ran away from this person, and she hid herself somewhere, and she appears in the compound of Reverend Risdale. He was a Church Mission Society missionary based in Cochin. And then she pleads to them, because this missionary and his wife were returning to their mission compound after church service. Then they found a black emaciated Pulea girl. She was less than I think 17 years at that time, who was sold as a slave to a British captain of a ship or something like that, and then he was supposed to take her to Java, right? So then she pleads to this missionary and requested that they accept her. And they had some hesitation because they didn't know who this person was, and then they said they will take care of her, and then she lives with them, and then they say that she grew in faith as a very devoted Christian. And then there is another case of a lady, her name is Coumba, so this comes from somewhere in Trishur district, and she also became a Christian, baptized. And these two individuals became Christians out of their choice, and because they didn't have any other things to do, and for a survival. And obviously they had both religious, spiritual and mundane problems to deal with, when they became Christians. Now then in 1850s, early 50s, you have this large movements, and that was absolutely religious, social, political and so on. So this question is a little more complex, but I guess one should look at this very complexity to understand the dynamism of that. Because today when I look at this, because I'm actually looking at the primary materials related to this, and I found that these are the very substantial political movements of that time. The mid-19th century, when you don't have political movements in Kerala at that point of time. And these missionary activities and their work against slavery, agrarian caste slavery, was absolutely political, which completely changed the social profile of this part of Kerala. So in that sense, I think these missionary movements were very significant, which made Christianity something substantial, something different from the Syrian Christianity. So I think there are well-definable kind of cleavages between these two Christianities. So even as they look at the same Bible, but the readings could be completely different, because these days I'm engaged in some kind of research related to the Dalit Christian prayers. So when I look at the issues from such a perspective, I find that the message of Bible became substantially different to the slaves who became Christians and compared to that of the traditional Christians of Kerala.